Well, good news and bad news. The good news is God knows exactly what God is doing. Bad news? It looks like this. It looks like the sum total of humanity. Who would have thought? I mean, it looks like God hasn't a clue what's going on. I mean, for God's sakes, how could all this crazy stuff go on? And I'm just talking about you. All those other people. It's challenging to have a belief in divinity, a higher power, and yet we see as human beings that all too often we're not living our best individually, collectively, politics and taking care of our planet. And, we should have at least figured out how not to blow each other up by now. But we haven't, have we? Unfortunately, there's still a great deal of conflict with people with strong beliefs fighting with other people with strong beliefs. The question is always what to do. And I think the most important thing to just take a step back and to consider is that you do have an incredible perspective. If you're here in this spiritual center, you've probably spent many hours. I mean, how many books have you read? What if they were piled in front of you? You probably couldn't even see me, All kinds of wonderful books on the perspective of the spiritual path, the nature of reality, how to improve your own well-being. How many hours have you listened to someone speak about spiritual things? How many practices have you done? How many times have you said a spiritual word or done a prayer, sat down to meditate, journaled? All different ways with a very beautiful and sincere intention to move forward. So it's not like you haven't spent a great deal of time in practice. And you do have a spiritual perspective. And part of the point of coming to something like this, a Sunday service, is to just refresh that perspective. Because in a way, that's all that's ever needed. And we might say to ourselves, what's needed for the world? What's needed for me? What's needed? It's just a point of view, a perspective, not far away at all. So here's a perspective. This is written by Swami Muktananda. He has a book, Where Are You Going? Which is a very good question for one to ask oneself on a very regular basis. Where am I going? Where am I going? Where am I going? Why am I doing this? Why do I think what I think and say what I say and do what I do? So Swami Muktananda wrote, the Indian scriptures pose a major question. What is the purpose of human life? According to the sages of Vedanta, the aim of life is to eliminate all suffering and to attain the highest joy. If we think about it, we realize that everything we do in life, we do for the sake of these two things. What do we want? We want happiness. We want ecstasy. We want love, vigor, and enthusiasm. And in one way or another, we try to obtain these things. See if you can recognize yourself in any of these. For the sake of happiness, we fall in love. Might work, might not, Get married. Raise children. Good news, bad news, Good children, bad children. Happiness, sadness, For the sake of happiness, we do business. We earn money. We pursue various skills, entertainments. Even when we deceive and harm other people, we do it with the hope that it'll bring us happiness. But if we were to truly examine ourselves, then we would discover that the happiness we are looking for can be found. Well, you know all this stuff. So if the happiness is found within, why is it so difficult to turn within? We want happiness, yet we continually practice the yoga of pain. We sow the seeds of suffering, and then we wonder, when will the fruit of happiness begin to blossom? So that's a perspective. To become a much better farmer, only really, really good seeds are worth planting. And it takes a lot of discrimination, a lot of practice, a lot of thought in order to separate the seeds one from the other. And I'm sure you've noticed that. So have you ever been challenged to live your spiritual values? I'm sure we can all say, well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's hard stuff. And it's true. It's true. If you decide to be in integrity, to be honest, to be loving, to be compassionate with everybody, one or two people, even that's tough. Maybe the dog or something. But like everybody, some of those people that are in the news, like those people, like be really loving with them? Well, the good news or the bad news is it's all or nothing. It's not going to work to love a bunch of people. That's good. Better than hating a bunch of people. But it's not going to work just to love some people. Because if we don't love everybody, we are not seeing the true nature of reality. So we're missing the boat. Now, I'm not saying, so just therefore, don't love anybody. I am saying, love the rest. Tall order. In fact, there is no taller order. There is nothing more challenging, not only in this universe, but the next one, and 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 the next one, next one, next one, next one, next one, next one. All of them. There is nothing more challenging, but there's nothing more fulfilling. How would you feel if you loved everybody? You might not agree with their point of view or their position or their actions or their behavior, of course. But that's not really the point. To love everybody. I bet you know how it feels not to love everybody. I bet you know how it feels to be angry. And you know how it feels to be hurt. And you know how it feels to be disappointed and disillusioned, etc., etc., etc. And I know you know how it feels to be completely content. Maybe those moments don't last as long as we'd like or happen as often as we'd like, but I bet everybody here has sighed with relief, whatever it may have been, whatever the time, whatever the occasion. Now, unhappiness and sadness and suffering, or which would you like? Think about it. He's giving us a tough choice here. Oh, man. That's a trick question. It's not, of course, right? It's so clear that the universe has laid out before each one of us a very clear understanding about where our happiness lies. How we sustain it, now there's the rub. How do we sustain happiness in the midst of this world, in our own mind, in our own life? So another little story. This is from a really wonderful book. It's been around for a while, but maybe you're familiar with it, maybe you're not. How Can I Help? Written by Ram Dass and Paul Gorman. It's just a collection of stories about helping in the world and dealing with the challenge of helping. So this is just one short story. A big, tough samurai once went to see a little monk. "Monk," he said, in a voice accustomed to instant obedience, "teach me about heaven and hell." The monk looked up at the mighty warrior and replied with utter disdain, "Teach you about heaven and hell? I couldn't teach you about anything. You're dirty. You smell. Your blade's rusty. You're a disgrace, an embarrassment to the samurai class. Get out of my sight. I can't stand you." Well, the samurai was furious. He shook. He got all red in the face. He was speechless with rage. He pulled out his sword, raised it above him, and prepared to slay the monk. "That's hell," said the monk. The samurai was overwhelmed. The compassion and the surrender of this little man who had offered his life to give this teaching to show him hell. He slowly put down his sword, filled with gratitude, suddenly peaceful. "And that's heaven," said the monk softly. So it's not any more complicated. I mean, not like a difficult story to understand in the meaning. Now the question is, can you be the monk? Can you find that place to sink into the depths of your pure being in the face of whatever the adversity is? Whether that adversity is just your mind spinning about some difficulty or challenge or question. Sometimes the adversity is other people. You know, those other people, they run around and, they say things and they do things and all those other people. What are you going to do? Wouldn't it be nice if all other people were Buddhas? All they did was meditate, pretty much 24/7. And whenever they saw you, they beamed all their practice. They recognized you for who you are. They had no judgment. They had no criticism. They had no issue. In fact, they saw you as God. Now, those other people would be great. But of course, unfortunately, a lot of other people aren't there yet. But how it would be if you were there, if you were able to be in the place that other people would love you to be. And again, of course, it's a tall order. And I don't know, what you've made out of all the spiritual teachings that you've had the fortune to accumulate, all the reading and the speaking and the talking and your own contemplations and your thinking about things, what your conclusion has been. Like, okay, I read all this stuff and I've taken the classes and I'm into this spiritual stuff. What are you going to do with it? We all do quite a bit with it, that's true. But there maybe is some more to do. And in fact, there's a lot more to do. And if we're not careful, we can get a little discouraged and we can think the distance between where I am and being some kind of self-realized being, that's going to take I better go to AAA and get one of those road maps that, But that's not really the point. One of the difficulties on the spiritual path is giving up our expectation of something like, how long is this going to take? Or how good will I do it tomorrow? Or how far have I come? And really what you're surrendering to is who you just really are. That's the most amazing spiritual truth that the deepest teachings revealed. If we could put it into, some kind of simple analogy, if we could take you out of your physical body, if we could take you to the highest planes of existence, to heaven or whatever you want to call it, and if you were to look back at yourself sitting here right in this church, see yourself in your life, see yourself raising children or going to work, or, doing the things you do, thinking the thoughts you think, saying the words you say, you would fall down in devotion, in ecstasy. Because you would see, when you see yourself, or it could be another, in the true light of things, you're divine. You're perfect. You're unfolding just as you should. And those are only so many words, but they're words that are true. So the question is, do you trust the universe? God, life, whatever you want to call it. And that's an honest question. It's something not to flippantly say, well, sure. Or, well, yeah, I've studied about all that. It's a really honest question. Do you trust life, God, the universe? What's going on? Which is it? That's another question, like, what's going on? But what's going on is a lot bigger than going to Safeway and getting gas in your car. I used to say that a lot. It's true. There's a lot going on from a spiritual point of view. So if you ask yourself, do I trust God? Do I trust life? I'm hoping the answer is yes. If it's not yes, then it might be something to put some more attention on. Do you trust yourself? That's a harder one. It might be easy to say, well, if we're talking about my higher self, the higher self, the one that's like back there and in the, or down deep inside of me, okay, that's fine. My higher self, okay, that's fine. But my Safeway self, my getting gas in the car self, well. What the good news or the bad news is, there's just yourself. There's not like different categories of it, really. We talk about it that way for the sake of talking about it that way. So it's a real question. Are you willing to trust yourself? Are you willing to believe that there is that within you that knows exactly what it's doing? And are you willing to trust your path, the way you live your life? Yes. Good. It's an ongoing examination, challenge, opportunity, and affirmation. So I always think if I could do something or say something that would really help, that would be what I'd want. And I have something that I'd like to say in the context of what I've shared up until this point. And it's just a perspective. It's just a way to try to bring something that I've experienced and offer it to you in the name of trusting God, trusting yourself, and trusting your life, your path. So for many years, as Reverend Sue mentioned, one of my main teachers was Swami Chidvilasananda, who was a student of Swami Muktananda. So I went to many classes and retreats that they had, many meditations and instructions, and they were all just, more, I could even say more than I could bear. That level of that much being revealed. But there's one moment that I want to share with you. And may it be that you can touch this moment. So we had gone through a whole weekend of a retreat. All kinds of things happened. It was all great. It was all wonderful. And just like the church, they have announcements and stuff. It's church, ashram, same. Have a master of ceremonies who starts things and finishes things and says now is going to be a break and do all that stuff. So Guru Mai, Swami Chitvilasananda, had finished speaking at the end of the last day. And I'd been to these things before. She'd give her talk, she'd call up the MC, and they'd start to do the wrap-up and the finishing, and she'd make her way out of the ashram hall. And so this is what was happening, that her talk was over, the MC came up, he was starting to say whatever it was about closing and blah, 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 blah. And Guru Mai starts to get up, and she walks almost all the way out to a door to leave. And she just stops. She just stands there. And the MC was one of her swamis. And he's a very tuned-in person, so he's talking away. He just goes. Sat down. Right. She's not done yet. And she just kind of stood there. And it seemed like for a really long time. And then very slowly, she just walked back, took her seat again, had the microphone in front of her. And she said, "You have no idea how far you've come. I sit in front of you, I look at you, and you don't see yourself. You've come so far on the spiritual path. Do you realize how far you've come? Lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, trying this, trying that, searching, opening your heart, falling in love, loss, death, the human experience. You've come so far, and you haven't given up. You haven't given up. You haven't given up. You're still here. Oh, thank God. Do you realize you're this far away? You're this far away from your goal. Don't falter now." It's true. It's true.